For the record, my name is Henry Santana, at-large City Councilor, and I am the Chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Today is February 13, 2025. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live-streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv and broadcasted on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Files Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.ps@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimony will be taken at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called on in the order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you are interested in testifying in person, please add your name to the sign-up sheet near the entrance of the chamber. If you are looking to testify virtually, please email our Central Staff Liaison, shane.pack@boston.gov for the link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on docket number 0163, order for a hearing to discuss enhanced public safety measures during large events in Boston. This matter was sponsored by Councilors Aaron Murphy, Ed Flynn, and Enrique Pepin, and was referred to the committee on January 8, 2025. Today I am joined by my colleagues in order of arrival, Councilor Ed Flynn and Councilor Aaron Murphy. At this time, I would like to give the lead sponsor and my colleagues the opportunity to give opening statements, starting with Councilor Murphy, and then we'll follow it up with Councilor Flynn.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for being here. Looking forward to this important conversation. After the terrorist attacks in New Orleans made me think about what precautions and what plans do we have. And I want to start by just saying thank you for all that you do. Know that we do have plans in place and that you all work very hard to make sure that the city and the residents, the visitors are safe, but making sure that, these attacks are kind of outside of the norm of everyday planning for our city and making sure that all of the departments have what they need, right? And we on the council, these conversations can help us make sure moving forward if we need to advocate for different departments to have more resources and making sure however we can plan for the most safety at these events. Councilor Flynn will, I imagine will speak on this, but I was at one of his monthly meetings that he's been having since last year's Evacuation Day Parade, and we know that there were close to 1 million people at that event, and there was behavior that we know is not what we want to see again this year. And there was lots of great conversation and different, you were on the call there, Commissioner Burke and others, that, coordinating with the different departments to make sure if we need resources and we need to lean on each other, how do we make sure we're doing that? So looking forward to your expertise, how we can work together to implement, and I think also if it needs to be, a coordinated response. And I did speak to a few captains across the city who said, and the municipal police here at this building had said there are times when they put a car like on City Hall Plaza if there's an event, or a captain had said there are times that, large events in their district, they might place, a police vehicle, but thinking of different ways we can make sure. So thank you for being here from Transportation also to talk about different resources that we can lean on across the city department. So looking forward to this hearing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. This time I'd like to recognize that we've been joined by Councilor Enrique Pepin, and then now I'll hand the floor over to Councilor Ed Flynn for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Boston is home to numerous large public events, including parades, festivals, open street activities. They attract significant numbers of residents and visitors. The safety and security of those at these events is critical, paramount importance to the city. Recent incidents, as Councilor Murphy highlighted, such as the New Orleans tragedy, terrorist attack, underscored the critical need to explore additional measures to protect large gatherings from potential threats. The use of physical barriers, including strategically placed vehicles, has been identified as an effective method to deter and prevent some of these types of threats. I also know that the BRIC, the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, also plays an important role. They do an exceptional job in our city, in our region as well. Proactively implementing enhanced safety measures informed by BRIC intelligence and their expertise could strengthen the city's preparedness for large-scale events and improve public safety outcomes. And finally, just want to say thank you to the administration team that's here, 5 dedicated professional city employees, but also want to acknowledge your team, the people that work for you, that do the work every day, Saturdays, Sundays, 24 hours, 7 days a week. They're always there for the residents of Boston and providing the best service they possibly can. And in my opinion, some of those people are really the unsung heroes of our city, working hard, being professional, ensuring the safety of residents and tourists is paramount. So want to acknowledge you and, more importantly, acknowledge your team for their professionalism and dedication to the residents of Boston. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. I'll hand it over to Councillor Pepin for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for having me as a co-sponsor for this very important topic. To the panelists here today, it's very good to see you all here. Thank you so much for the work that you do. I think my colleagues said it perfectly. The City of Boston has many amazing community events throughout the year. It could be a parade, it could be a festival, it could be block parties, you name them. And for me, my priority is to make sure that everyone's safe. So for me, it's to learn what protocols you guys put in place. How could we continue to make them safer by installing new protocols? I said at the previous hearing that one of the events that really brought my attention was at the Dominican Festival last year. I was present when the shooting happened, and I remember just seeing a swarm of cars, blocking Circuit Drive in Franklin Park, and I said, maybe we should shut this street down next year so that people aren't able to congregate like that in such a enclosed area. So that's why I decided to be a part of this hearing, to make sure that I am part of the conversation moving forward. But overall, just very thankful for the work you all do day after day in the city of Boston. So looking forward to working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pepin. I would like to now to introduce today's panelists. I also just want to thank you all, as Councillor Flynn mentioned, for being here, for being present, for the work that you all do. And I know that some of you are returning from a previous hearing that we just had. So really appreciate all of your efforts. I will now introduce the panelists that we have here today. After that, if you can all just state your name and your title for the record as well, and then we can proceed with your opening remarks and hand it over to councilors' questions. So with us today we have Adrian Jordan, who is the Chief of Emergency Preparedness of the Office of Emergency Management, Paul Burke, the Commissioner for the Boston Fire Department, Daniel Nee, Assistant Superintendent with Public Works Department, Superintendent Robert Sicolo, Bureau Chief, Bureau of Field Services with the Boston Police Department, and James Hooley, Chief of Emergency Medical Services. So thank you all for being here. If you can just all just state your name and your title for the record, and then we can proceed.
Adrian Jordan, Chief of Emergency Preparedness.
Superintendent Bob Chicolo, Boston Police, Chief of the Bureau of Field Services.
Paul Burke, Boston Fire Commissioner and Chief of the Boston Fire Department.
Jimmy Hooley, Chief, Boston EMS.
Daniel Nee, Superintendent, Street Operations, Public Works.
Great. Again, thank you so much. We have a great lineup here with us here today. With that, I'll hand it over to our panelists for any opening remarks or presentations that you all may have.
Good morning. Well, thank you for having us here. We always appreciate the support and as we, all of us, discuss what resources we need and the support that we get for that. We are constantly reassessing what we do for public events. We use the BRIC intelligence to guide that. We use our own past experience. We use events in other cities to look and say, geez, could that happen here? And do what we can to reduce that. And we work with our public safety partners to reduce and mitigate those risks. And while at the same time, you know, the mission of the Boston Police Department is community policing, we do that in a way that is also supportive and respectful of the quality of life in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you also for having us here today. I believe this is a very important topic. There's a lot of special events in the city of Boston. The cooperation amongst our agencies is so important, and it's at a high level, and we all get along, and we all meet regularly for events like this. The Boston Marathon, every year, a month after it's over, they start planning the next one. We don't take this incidents like this lightly. The Boston Fire Department was asked by the fire chiefs in France 2 years ago if they could come and speak to us about the marathon because they were having the Summer Olympics. So we hosted them. So our reputation is worldwide. We take this very seriously. We have a division of field services that does all the planning for this in coordination with the police, EMS, Office of Emergency Management, and the Department of Public Works. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and councilors. You're going to hear a pretty common theme here, I think, among all of us at this table. But just real quickly, just on behalf of Boston EMS, just a couple of remarks I just wanted to get into. 2024, 440 EMTs at Boston EMTs and paramedics at Boston EMS responded to more than 140,000 different clinical incidents, transported 93,774 patients to area hospitals. And in addition to delivering pre-hospital care to the residents and visitors of the city of Boston, the department has prioritized emergency preparedness and training for mass casualty events. One event, whether it's safe streets, a street fair, Boston Marathon, New Year's Eve, St. Patrick's Day Parade, that's like one event out of all those events. But so the scale of preparedness, goes up as well. But we realize that we have to protect the rest of the city, and everybody who's sitting at this table, we know that when we're looking at protecting our communities for our residents and visitors at large events. For example, there was an organizing meeting for the marathon last night. They've always been very concentrated on protecting the course and the integrity of the course and keeping that safe from whatever. Everybody at this table is just as concerned as what's going on outside the fence, out in the neighborhoods, and to farther different parts of the city. So that's whether it's for small events or larger events, that's something that, as Superintendent Chicola said, we're constantly reevaluating what worked last time, what has to be improved, and also the fact that we do learn lessons from what happens in other cities. As Commissioner Burke has said, we've been learning lessons from whether it was the sarin attack in the 90s in Tokyo on public transportation, Hurricane Katrina, all the different things that disrupt either transportation, our ability or access to get to patients, 9/11, obviously the performance of Boston during the bombings in 2013. Those are all things that we've really leaned forward into preparing, so that realizing that it's not just a question of if, but when we look what happens around the world. Likewise, we hosted a conference here back in, I believe it was around 2017. We brought over counterparts from Paris after the multi-coordinated attacks to see how we can maximize survival in the event that something happens that, despite the best planning, still occurred. And just, with that, in mind, I just also just want to say that we do treat all of our special events as if they're, as if it's a potential for mass casualty, but with the idea of trying to prevent it. Boston's been using blocking vehicles since the 2004 DNC convention that was here. But most of that was to protect the venue, right? They had T-buses or specialized police units down there for ramming truck and attacks. However, that's expanded over the years. And with the use of PTD using big, heavy equipment, after we saw what happened in southern France, coastal France, on their Bastille Day, when somebody with one person in a truck was able to kill scores and scores of people, those lessons were embraced here and learned, where we do use a lot of heavy equipment here, but then it got enhanced so that we have, make sure that we have the drivers are always available, so if we have to move those so we can get people out or get more resources in, we could do it. We constantly reevaluate those plans. And also, can we still get hospital workers and staff to the hospitals during these times? Everybody tries to study every part of the plan, so we're not interrupting deliveries of other essential services while we're doing that. And yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, but in other city departments are all involved when we're planning for open streets and such as well too. Where are the emergency cutouts in case we have to get to a call one block in? So that they're just as important as anyone who's on the street. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, councilors, thank you. Public Works, we're happy to jump in and play our small role in public safety whenever asked by BPD or emergency management. Happy to answer any questions and looking forward to the conversation, see how we can get better and grow bigger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick, so I wanted to thank you guys again for the opportunity to speak today about the important role that the Emergency Management Office plays in safeguarding the community. Real quick about the EOC, because there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what we do. So the EOC serves as a centralized hub for coordination and communication during planned events and unplanned events. It's equipped with advanced technology to monitor real-time conditions, track resource allocation, and facilitate rapid decision-making. During events like the Boston Marathon, the EOC brings together representatives from all partner agencies, ensures seamless coordination and communication, and a unified response to any situation. And lastly, emergency management is a continuous year-round effort that requires dedication and cooperation from all the agencies that you see here. And it's a cooperation that we can speak to highly over the almost year that I've been here, and I'm pretty sure my predecessor can speak to that directly. The planning that goes into events like the marathon exemplifies the extensive coordination and preparation required to ensure the safety of our communities. So with the EOC being the central focus of that. So thank you again, and we'll look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you to our panelists again for being here and for those opening remarks. I will now turn it over to my colleagues, starting with the lead sponsor and going to my other colleagues as well. I'm going to give it like 7 minutes. We'll do as many rounds as we want, but just to keep the conversation moving and flowing with between counselors, we'll do about 7 minutes per counselor. But really appreciate again you all being here. Counselor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you all for your opening remarks. A few questions. You mentioned that since 2004 you've been using vehicles to block. Do you feel that there's a need to increase that just based on behaviors that are different now in 2025 across the world?
So I think I'll take that, Counselor, if that's okay. The short answer is yes. Couple things. Number one, you have, call it displacement. To speak to, for example, Councilor Pepin's comments about Circuit Drive and the Dominican Festival, one of the things you have to understand is we're not talking about wind or water here. We're talking about people that we, for the sake of an argument, if this coming year we close Circuit Drive, the individuals involved in that behavior, the car clubs, whatever, are going to move that behavior somewhere else. And we're going to need to be able to react to that in an agile fashion. The same is true for things like the marathon, St. Patrick's Day, what have you, is that, you know, we need to understand that the events you were speaking of here with blocking vehicles are, you have a thinking opponent. You have somebody who's looking at what you do and making their own, the other guy has a plan too. It's probably not the same as yours. And so that's the challenge, and that's where, for example, the intelligence from the BRIC comes in, and our experiences from previous events. We have, yes, to the point, we've used blocking vehicles, to my memory, going back as far as the aftermath of September 11th, for high-profile events, when we only used them for high-profile dignitary sort of things, presidential visits and the like. And it has steadily grown as the threat has evolved.
Thank you. About the technology, Commissioner Burke, we talked, I think, a couple of years ago about, was it Hingham or other towns were leaning on our drones and other things. Could we speak to the technology that has maybe enhanced, and if there's a need to get even better technology?
Well, we do have our drone unit, and that is at every special event. There's a couple things that you really don't know about because we don't make it public, but at a special event, we have air quality testing all over the event. In case there's some kind of chemical release that we don't know about, it goes, we know about it, we can evacuate. Those are some of the technology things that I think are important. The drone is probably the most valuable tool we've had in years because it can see everything. It can zoom into an incident in seconds, so we know what resources to get there. With a parade or a special event, it's difficult for us to move 20-ton fire trucks to a parade. We can't break into the parade. So we started using gators, the golf carts. So we'll have firefighters on them. They can get around faster. If an alarm goes off in a building or somebody needs help in a building, they can get there on the gator. We'll send the drone, and then they can request more assistance if they need it, if the building's on fire or whatever the emergency is. So technology plays a large role for us to get there quicker and to mitigate any circumstance that the people that get there find when they get there.
Yeah, could you speak more, I think all departments, on that issue where when there's an event like the North End festivals or the South Boston with the parade and we're shutting things down, but then there's neighbors or, you know, businesses who worry, like, what if I need to call 911? What if we need you to come in for like a, you know, someone has a heart attack, and how do you get around? So how do you plan for that also, not just the attendees at the events, but those residents nearby?
So in the case of the St. Patrick's Day parade or the marathon, because there might not be firehouses on one side of the parade route, we station fire trucks there. In South Boston, we'll put them at the Murphy Rink. We hire a separate district chief, and we bring in 4 or 5 other fire trucks from other parts of the city and station them on that side of the route. We have the other side covered by the D Street Firehouse, the K Street Firehouse. So we try to strategically cover that. We do the same thing at the marathon. On the one side of Boylston Street, there are no firehouses, so we put fire trucks there for the duration of the parade so they can respond to any emergency. It's key to us to geographically cover every area of the city, especially when there's an obstacle like a parade or a marathon that you can't get through. So that's how we station people to protect everybody in the city.
Okay, 2 more questions. Is there, when you have these meetings, and clearly you guys do meet often, and is there like an attendance threshold that might, you know, kick in a new level of security? Do we have like events that we already know? And it is always based on attendance, or are there other factors that may have you make sure you have more security for different reasons?
I think maybe I can speak to that. We have, if you will, intelligence assessments from the BRIC that take in a lot of factors. We discuss them internally. We discuss them with our public safety partners on an ongoing basis. You know, to give you an example, a protest with 100,000 people or an event with 100,000 people where there's no opposition, that's just a traffic problem. On the other hand, if there is opposition likely to be present, then we increase our posture. There's that sort of thing. We look at things like weather. I mean, for the sake of an argument, we haven't had it lately, but it is conceivable that the St. Patrick's Day Parade takes place in the middle of a blizzard. Well, that's going to activate some different equipment needs than that. So it's very much evolving, and when it comes to the human-authored threat, we generally don't discuss too much what our responses are going to be, because then they will adjust their plans as well.
Right, makes sense. Sure, yeah.
To your point about thresholds for moving security from one place to another, and the security issues that's a police matter. But just some conversations that we've been having with the planning department and the permitting department, that maybe we can trigger certain security protocols around a certain threshold. So if the crowd size has moved to XYZ, especially on the EOC side, emergency operations side, okay, our emergency operations center should get a trigger from planning or permitting, saying, and now we're on the calls, and we just need to devise a way that we can be more involved in the process in terms of how many people are supposed to attend this event, so we can have situational awareness around, hey, there's going to be X amount of people at this event. Maybe there's something we need to activate the EOC minimally, just so that we have situational awareness that if the police are busy, obviously, we could also be another set of eyes and ears. So to your point, we are actively in conversations about that.
Thank you. I'll wait till the second round. More questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you to the panel for being here today. So generally speaking, can a couple of you talk about large events where you're going to need a large segment of your employees at the event, supporting it for public safety, logistic reasons, but explain to me or tell us about the plan on how you're also ensuring that the entire city is also protected and has the necessary personnel, resources, and equipment in case there's an emergency at another part of the city.
Well, I would just like to say the Boston Fire Department has 264 members on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our department has over 1,500 members. We don't have a staffing issue. So when it's St. Patrick's Day, the marathon, I can hire 1,000 people. We probably hire 200. We don't have a staffing issue with that. So the staffing level is fine. Last week's storm, so everything that happens, we meet. So last week's storm, I increased the staffing on certain vehicles. I increased the staffing on ladder companies, rescues, the tower companies. We also, for storms, because fire trucks, our objective is to get back to the firehouse and be ready for the next call. So we have these cars we call tango cars with a couple firefighters in them. So when wires go down, which is a very common offense, high voltage wires are on the ground, we cannot leave them. We bring these cars in, and they relieve the fire companies on the scene. They go back in service. So it's key to keep as many fire companies in service as we can. We don't want to tie them up to, for lack of a better word, babysit, pop down wires. So we have these tango cars that sit there and do it until the power company arrives and mitigates the emergency.
Councilor, we maintain our minimum staffing within the neighborhood stations at all times. We'll also, hire overtime as needed, officers who are off duty to come in for the major events. We're very cognizant of the number of hours that they work. We have limitations on that. So, you may have at some point officers who worked a midnight shift, they're now at an event. And if that event is going to go past a certain time, we will release them so that they can go home and get some sleep before they have to come back in. We keep very close track of that for a number of reasons, including officer wellness and safety. We also lean very heavily, excuse me, on our state and other municipal partners for this. We'll ask for assistance from the state police. We will ask for assistance from the various law enforcement councils. And depending on the SEER level of event, we also have our federal partners that are available for various specialized functions as well. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Similarly, Councilor, we do staff up, and again, as we're saying, the planning things for special events or large events is of course to protect the event, the participants, and people, spectators, what have you. But again, the whole goal of any of those plans is to make sure that we don't want to have to rely on pulling in resources from other parts of the city to come in to augment it, unless something was truly a disaster. The idea, every year, for example, at the marathon, using a lot of the medical volunteers and otherwise to take care of a lot of the routine things that happen there, is we explain that, hey, somebody who's having their an MI in South Boston who has to get to a cath lab, somebody else who maybe a roofer that falls doing some work somewhere else in the city could care less that the marathon's running or that the Celtics are having a victory parade. They need their attention. They got to be taken care of, and we understand that. So we try to always keep that in mind. With that, we will try to staff up in not some additional resources for outside the event, but a lot in the footprint of the event so that we can, one, get to people that are in the affected area. Similarly, we use gators, and we have these other small mini ambulances, they're called ASAPs, that are they're actually licensed as Class 5, so if we need to, we can also transport in them. They can get through smaller areas, and we have deployed those and used those effectively for the last couple of years as well. We utilize EMTs and paramedics on bicycles with equipment so they can get into situations and be able to perform a quick assessment to see, do we even need an ambulance? Or is this somebody we can get on a cart or on a wheelchair or something else and bring them back to a treatment area and evaluate them there? We will, on events for the last several years, like for evacuation day, where we always will have at least one treatment area, and again, because of the weather, we never know what it's going to be. We'll typically deploy our Tango 10 unit, which is a bus which has stretchers, the ability to put wheelchairs, multiple equipment on it. We may have, there were times down on D Street last year, we would have maybe several people in there at a time. So instead of having to have 7 ambulances to come in for a lot of people that were maybe overindulged or mental status change, or we're evaluating, we could keep them there for a bit. We had physicians on board. We could make decisions whether somebody could be treated and released, or legally refuse, or okay, make a call to, like, hey, next time we have a unit cleared, this is a lower priority. We can put 2 people in an ambulance, take them to the hospital, try to be more efficient about how we prioritize and triage from that point. And like what Councilor Murphy was asking, like sometimes again, depending what the event is it a friendly crowd? Is it a celebratory crowd? Or is a possibility that groups may be squaring off? We, in cases like that, we'll often be requested, we'll dedicate EMTs and medics with some specialized, a higher level of protective equipment to support police public order platoons, or to stage really ready with a small vehicle so they can get in and quickly extract people under the force protection of the Boston Police. So to make sure that we can take care of the first responders who are in there as well too, dedicate somebody to that. And if we have to, and again, if somebody we evacuate to a treatment area and then decide how it goes from there. And key partners in this are the healthcare facilities. I mean, everybody knows what the emergency rooms are like just on a typical day now. in the state, never mind Boston. They're at capacity. But when we have scheduled or close to, no notice events that pop up, we do get on our radio network and phone trees. We contact the reps from all the Conference of Boston teaching hospitals and quickly give them updates so that they can gear up. So if necessary, they have to hold over staff at shift change, or so that they can have some planning assumptions that, hey, you may be getting half a dozen people from something downtown, and we're not sure, somebody might have let some pepper spray go in the crowd, and fires deconning them right now, but just be aware, some people may walk into your hospital like that, and we don't want you to have to shut that place down. So the idea is to really keep the information sharing going, and probably the most important thing we do is during those events, whether they come up abruptly or whether they're planned months in advance, is to make sure that we also have our representatives at besides the EOC, in addition to the EOC, which is very important, we have people in the BPD host
Law Enforcement Command
yeah,
Center.
the LEC, thank you. Where they coordinate police, MBTA, Boston, state, what have you, colleges. Again, if it's a friendly celebratory, if the Red Sox run a championship thing, which they could be out of town. Typically, what we'd see was they would have cameras up there watching wow, all of a sudden they won a World Series. You could see dorms emptying out. You could see whatever going on. You'd have representatives from the people that kind of curtailing it. And you would see, for some reason, Kenmore Square became a gathering point. Because if we've seen that in the past, the BPD would have a plan to, knowing that crowds and cars don't mix, whether there's evil intent, whether there's alcohol involved or not, they don't mix. So they'll just shut down traffic that can come into the area or limit it and divert it from there, so that knowing that crowd's coming, if they're a bunch of celebratory college kids or whatever it is, we don't want them mixing the streets at the same time as cars, because you never know what one excited motorist might do. And again, Boston's learned from that, and they'll quickly do it. And a lot of real-time intelligence technology with them monitoring cameras and their ability to look at how packed the T stations are. There's a lot of good coordination there, which really prevents a lot of unnecessary injuries and events. It's hard to approximate how much is avoided and managed by the work that the departments do in concert.
Thank you.
So we have met every ask from BPD so far as staffing levels. A lot of help from Water and Sewer and BTD and Parks Department to help us get those blocking vehicle numbers. For us, the kind of real issue is cleaning kind of pre-event, obviously, and then post-event, like cleaning up after the parade last year was difficult, that we had to move most of the cleanup to overnight, like get these guys home for a little bit of a rest and then come back in to get the parade route back to, regular status, open for business in the morning. But as of yet, we've accommodated every ask from BTD at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, am I out of time or?
Yes, Councilor, you're
Okay.
at time, but we'll do another.
No, that's fine.
As many
Yep.
rounds as we need.
Thank you for those answers, gentlemen.
No, appreciate the thoroughness. I also failed to mention earlier that we were been joined by District 3 City Councilor John Fitzgerald, and I'll turn it over now to Councilor Pepen for his rounds of questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are more towards the application process for a community event or a special event in the city of Boston. When someone is submitting an application to do a festival or a parade, which one of your departments sit in those meetings?
So I know police, fire, and EMS all sit in them. We don't run those. They're run out of City Hall here, so we are a participant.
Yeah.
And they bring in other groups as needed. I mean, if the event's not in a park, you don't need Parks Department, right?
Right.
And my understanding is that they bring in other city departments as required for those.
Okay. And I guess for BPD, do you ever get the chance to speak with the applicants in case they do require or are asking for any safety measures or police presence?
So on the police side, we have our special events unit. That's all they do. That is their full-time job, to engage in the special event planning process and to then do after-action review. That goes into the file, so next year when you come back, we know what happened last time. That's our piece of it. I'll let the others speak for themselves.
Yeah, the fire department looks at different aspects of it. Obviously, it's not security. We're looking at fire safety. So if they have propane tanks, we want them spaced appropriately. We want firefighters on duty at a paid detail to watch them. We're concerned about evacuation routes. If something does happen, we want to keep the routes open for people to get out of there if there is an emergency. That's what we're looking at, the fire safety aspect of it, and evacuation is our main priority when it comes to these special events. So.
Okay. And for the detail that are assigned to the events, think about the cultural events, not just the Dominican Festival, the parade, the Puerto Rican Festival, the carnival that happens in parts of my district. The police that are assigned to that, do you try to? I know it's helpful to have police officers that are representative of that community, so that there's language understanding, cultural understanding. Is that something that you take into consideration?
Certainly it is, in that, for various, if there's language involved or something like that, you're looking for volunteers from that culture. For example, I'll use an example. We just had the lion dances in Chinatown.
Yeah.
And certainly we put out citywide asking for any officers who speak the languages involved to volunteer for that. We start with that. Most of these events, again, we are a community police department. Most of these events, most of the organizing groups, we have our members who are part of those organizing groups as well, whether it be the Caribbean Festival, the Dominican Festival, St. Patrick's Day Parade. We have people who are Boston police officers who, if you will, are sitting on both sides of the table.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the huge advantages of the Boston Police Department, how we do things, that our people are that deeply embedded in the community. So it's not they're over here and we're over here. It's us deciding together how we are going to do things. Does that answer your question, Counselor?
It does. And the reason why I bring it up is because I think that it adds a huge advantage to the events that happen, because I saw it at the Dominican Festival. So I just wanted to make sure that it happens for everywhere, where a lot of the residents were able to speak with the police officers and feel comfortable after the accident happened. Which leads me to my next point is, when an incident happens, how do you analyze what happened? How do you take into consideration, all right, what do we got to change for the upcoming year? Obviously, 2013 is a big example of that. But even for the smaller events where, in my case, I'm using the example of the Dominican Festival with the shooting, what do you do in order to prepare yourselves for the next year?
Well, I think in something like that, the first thing that takes priority is the criminal investigation. The immediate response for public safety, get EMS, get fire in, take care of the injured, you know what I'm saying, and get them out in the care they need. That, the sanctity of human life there always comes first. Secondly, we now have a crime scene and a criminal investigation. And part of the outcomes of both of those then inform an after-action process. And in my department at least, the special events unit, that is one of their specified functions, is to take all of this information,
Yeah.
discuss it. We will discuss it with the local commanders. We will discuss it with the neighborhood. You know, again, we engage in daily, weekly, monthly community engagement. So trust me, every single community meeting with every single group that bordered anywhere near Franklin Park, for example, after that, there was some direct discussion between the police department and the community about what happened and their thoughts on what we should do about it. All of that gets incorporated into our response.
Okay. No, I think that's, first of all, thank you for that. And I think you brought up a good point earlier in the hearing where you said, all right, if we close Circuit Drive, again, this is just an example, they're just going to go somewhere else. That's a big fish to try to catch, see where they're going to go, what's going to happen. So I'm going to try to be as collaborative as possible to work with your departments and to make sure that we continue to have successful events in the city of Boston. But I thank you for bringing up that point and for clarifying a lot of the initiatives that you guys take when preparing for any event in the city of Boston. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Councilor.
Council, well, if I may, I'll just jump on that as well.
Yeah.
But as far as like after any event, we always, specifically always from the supervisors, command staff that's involved with anything, we ask them to submit after action reports. And just give an example on that event. Yeah, we spoke to all of our crews that were up there last night in Perk, and just tried to get, what did you see from the ground, what was have you, and like, do we, so some of the issues I'm trying to remember off the top of my head right now were, the event had run a little bit, I think, later than it was first anticipated, and it was a gorgeous night, not as many people leaving, and I'd have to say for at least a dozen previous years, the Dominican Festival was always much more low-key. We didn't really have anything like that associated with it. And, perhaps there was a little bit of, I don't want to say complacency, but it was kind of, we were almost maybe a little bit surprised at how much happened up there, but with the traffic, with the roads, and just the fact that there was just such great turnout, which was good for the event, but that, again, being able to get people out and orderly when, hey, party's over and it's time to go. So there's a lot of different things that get raised on that, and obviously we'd want to increase our size, the footprint of the event next time. But again, the lessons from that, didn't necessarily wait for this coming year coming up. I'd say that with the next event that was coming up afterwards, a big event was going to be the Caribbean at Juve, the two-part, and which has been tweaked many times over the years because of maybe some things that would happen at 6 o'clock in the morning, not just later that afternoon. There was a lot of things made to steps introduced to that, close down certain streets to get a little bit tighter on how things were going to be managed with the organizers, make sure we're communicating things. So there was already a lot of steps. We didn't wait for this year. We started making adjustments even just for the next event, increasing our representation at these events. And similar to the police, we do have, we're fortunate we do have a fair amount of actually native Spanish speakers who are on duty and across the city at any given shift. We do offer overtime to everybody for those events. We do encourage a lot of people. Not surprising. We do get we do get a response for that, but we also have the ability, we have people on regular duty that day, and if, you know, and if need be, we can reassign folks for their regular reporting and backfill them with overtime. So that's the way we try to address that.
No, Chief, I really appreciate that breakdown, and glad to hear that you guys are being even proactive with making sure that for any next events happening, you guys are already taking steps to make it safer. So thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Pepen. We'll now turn it over to Councilor Fitzgerald. You have the floor in about 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for being here today. It's good to see everybody. Sorry for my tardiness to today's hearing. So if this has already been, some of the stuff's already been asked, forgive me. You can give me an abbreviated answer and I'll catch up later. But first question around federal funding and sort of the effect it might take on any of you. Was that asked already? All right, great. How big is our concern in terms of the impacts it may or may not have in terms of what you do operationally to staff these large events? I know a lot of people don't know right now, right? That's sort of the thing, right? But I mean, so talk to me about what potential implications could be affected.
Well, I'll start.
Please.
That's okay. I would, thank you, Council, good to see you again.
Yep.
You're for the immediate here and now, like you said, everyone's kind of watching to see what's going on, which is going to be like, well, hey, we're not going to pay this, and what judge may put an injunction in, and we'll pay it for now. But so again, I watch the news every day too. But aside from that, some of my concerns going forward are we've been successful as a city, but as our department over the years in securing some key grants that would help us prepare to train, to maybe get different equipment. Like a lot of the equipment that we mentioned that we've got in years past that we have now for special events, like the small mini vehicles to be able to get in and out, some of the specialized PPE, you know, the portable eye wash stations in case we have to take care of large crowds for that. A lot of things were purchased with grant money that came from either different health and human services things, or from UASI, or from other things. Again, so if we worry about that, a lot of the training initiatives that we did were grant funded, whether it was supporting urban search and rescue with dedicated medical people, other things were done with those funds. So I am concerned about down the line for that, and also concerned about our ability then to, we brought in, as I alluded to in my remarks, we brought in, using some grant dollars, when we brought in like physicians and responders and other people who dealt with coordinated attacks in France, or beyond that, going back years ago, we brought over people from the London Ambulance Service, Metropolitan Police, after their subway bombings, and spent like, yes, we had a conference, but we spent hours talking about, hey, what in your plan worked and didn't work once it came to game day, right?
Gotcha.
And we brought in people from Spain after the Atocha bombings, and on and on and on. Right. It's those valuable things, and bringing up the first responders from after Katrina, like, hey, what did you guys do when your homes are gone, but you're expected to work? You know, so many different things. That may not, I'm not sure where those dollars will come from now. And those weren't fun frill things. Those were like, I can't send my whole department to Europe to learn from them.
No,
but
sure.
we could bring some people over here now and then, similar to Boston Fire going over to Paris. Some of that stuff is at risk.
Thank you,
And
Chief.
then the healthcare system, the first receivers, hospitals closures, as you well know, the impact of all of that on us and what the federal dollars may be doing there. You know, the fact that some of the bigger hospitals now are announcing second rounds of layoffs. That's all part of our ability.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate that. I would imagine for the others, right? It's similar things. You're worried about equipment, training. They're all stuff that paid with federal grants. We don't have to go into the specifics, but those are all things that could be affected that would later on could show itself in a large-scale event should something go wrong, which is concerning, obviously. Around demonstration and protests, I know you consider that depending, that can be a large event. The question was on, my question was on, what is the criteria? At what point, right? I mean, I do a road race every year, 500 people. I don't know, is that a large event? And I don't think the police has a drone over the road race for that necessarily. But there are, so what is that, what is the criteria of when we go, all right, we're doing large event status here. And we're
Let me just speak on the fire department. If we're closing roadways, we're involved in it because we can't get the fire trucks through. So we're informed by the transportation department, the police, that these roadways are closed. Whether we have a presence there, it depends on the number of people, again, if there's cooking or something like that, so.
Yeah. Is there a criteria, a number of people to consider it a large-scale event?
That might be in law enforcement.
So my answer is, I think I addressed it a little bit earlier with Councilor Murphy, but the answer is fungible, right?
Okay.
In that, I said 100,000 people that are all on the same side of an issue, that's just a traffic problem.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I did hear that, yeah.
500 people on two different sides of something,
It's an issue, yeah.
that may require more staffing than the 100,000. And what is the issue? What is the threat?
Gotcha. Thank you. Final question, because I know I'm probably approaching my time here. Much like a lot of events we've seen, I mean, even just this morning in Germany, I don't know if you guys saw that, and someone plowed through a crowd of people, right? So this is exactly the type of stuff that we're discussing. In the event of mass casualties, I know, like for the marathon, we were lauded for the after the event, how quickly we got people to the hospitals, how quickly, like the lives that were saved from all the work that all of you guys do, right? And the coordinated response is what I think people come to us and say, how did you guys do that? We'd like to do that in other cities. I know 10, 15, about 15, whatever it is, 10, 15 years later here, I'm sure some people have changed, some things have changed. Do we still feel that if that would occur anywhere in the city, that we could have that same response? I know because of the location of that, hospitals were nearby and it made it easier. But if that were to occur in South Boston, in Dorchester, at another large-scale event, a parade, a dot day, or something like that, right, where would we have the coordinated response we have from downtown in the neighborhoods as well? And is that something that's thought out, or would that be like on the fly, take them to the Carney, which is another reason why the Carney is going to reopen, and that throw my little tie in there. But is that sort of like come into play of how you guys think about, all right, if there is X amount of people, something went off, we got a problem, we're in South Dorchester, where are we taking everybody? Is that all planned out prior to, or is it sort of like on the fly?
Well, if I can speak to that. No, in our case, we just want to cover everything like that. So I could have every fire truck in the city at that incident.
Right.
And the surrounding cities and towns will send fire trucks in to cover the firehouses, so the people of the city are never unprotected from fire safety.
Yeah.
So we would take care of it. We would be there. We would do everything we could to mitigate that emergency. And then not just in special events, everyday events. If you cannot plan for a terrorist attack. It doesn't have to be at a special event like in Germany or anything else. It could be just a regular day. Somebody goes downtown and does something. So we're prepared 24 hours a day for something like that. We will respond, and everybody will be protected that's left unprotected for a few minutes while other fire trucks come in.
No, that's great to hear. Thank you. I just was hoping to replicate what we were allotted for in the past, and hopefully that could be done anywhere in the city. If you had that same response, I think that makes the residents of the city feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So,
Councilor, real quick, I can speak to obviously the preparation that goes in to the events. First of all, to your first question about large crowd designation or large event designation, based on the calls that I've been on with the planning department and permitting department, I'm not sure if there's a number and we had talked about this earlier about a threshold, and we were in conversations about a threshold sparking other commitments from the city in terms of the EOC. And then to your second question about something happened in South Dorchester, that's where our partnerships are so intermingled and so important in terms of like the EOC. If we have the EOC activated, which we plan to do more of now, as everything has moved on, our need for more eyes is also going to move us into a different spectrum of how many times we're going to activate the EOC. Right now, we're currently probably only do it for larger events, and we need to start looking at other events. Pretty much a lot of the city's calendar to have eyes and ears to help our partners and have that overall jurisdiction. So if something happened, we'd assume, like the commissioner said, we can't plan for it. But because of the great coordination between our agencies, I don't think there's another city that does it as well as we do.
That's what we want to hear. Thank you very much.
As far as our partners with the hospitals, so if, again, take that scenario, or whatever scenario you're conceiving there in Dorchester, or anywhere, the principles are the same, right? Where it's the idea of if you identify a multiple casualty, a mass casualty, even just based on potential number of casualties, it's what we try to drill is to the goal is to, get the right patients to the right hospital in the right time. So to do that, it's establishing command and quick designations, triage, like who's, for example, we talk about the marathon, there were 20 people that were tagged red. People with the missing limbs, people that didn't have blood pressures, people who were unconscious. After that, I think it was 25 yellow, which, they're serious, but they're not going to die in the next hour. But so you try to get the reds out first, try to get the next ones out. It sounds easy, but the idea is we try to drill, we try to prepare for it. That yes, hey, you could be the night shift in ambulance 13 in Jamaica Plain, and you're going to be the first win. Crap. But what do? Try to switch into that mode. The supervisors come in, but the early on is for us to alert the hospitals, alert the private ambulances in the area to try to get that force multipliers available to, or even to bring them up to help backfill neighborhoods for us as well. But for the hospitals, it's so that they all have their own internal disaster plans. They're acutely aware of the pressures that are on them now, and how do we stand up for something like this? So that means that elective surgery is getting canceled. Someone who might be coming in for guess what? You're not going to get that shoulder surgery you're waiting for 3 months. It ain't going to happen because they're clearing ORs, or they're prioritizing things, or they're getting ready to, who can they discharge now? Who can they get out of ICUs or move somewhere, even if it means transferring them out of town? They go through those internal drills, and so that's why it's very important that if something should suddenly occur, if we're going to have a good maximize survival, that's the bottom line. Awesome. Is to have very good coordination between the medical community and us.
Well, thank you for what you all do. I appreciate it. Sorry for going on my time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Fitzgerald. I'm going to ask a few questions. I'm going to tell myself, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues for a second round. Just on that note, Chief Jordan, you just mentioned about the coordination, and I think you all have brought it up in your responses in terms of the coordination between you all. In terms of, in case of emergency, something happens, so no, not talking about large events that are planned, but what happened in 2013, situations like that. Who leads on that coordination? Is it the EOC? Who's the one that activates everyone else? We need EMS here, we need fire department here. Who's making that call?
Well, it's all predicated on the first initial call, right? That's where it starts. So the first initial caller to 911, whatever resource it might be for police, fire, EMS, that starts the process. And it's funny that you bring that question up. We had a conversation yesterday about a mass communication gathering that we had yesterday with all these agencies that you see here. So what we're trying to do is get agencies together, and we have a call. So if something happens in the city that we hadn't planned for, what will happen is a notification goes out to somebody on the staff, the upper staff of the public service agencies here. And we have the ability, with the click of a button, to get everybody on a call. So they can get situational awareness around what's happening, here's what's happening, and then we can then advise who we need to advise from there. So to your question, we just had the first initial meeting yesterday about like an Everbridge notification for the superior officers, so that we can start having that conversation about situational awareness around what is going on, what's happened, how's it happened. But your initial question, it's obviously triggered by the first call that comes in to whichever dispatch.
I'd also speak, Counselor, to the National Incident Command System, which we've all been trained in, which sets out a framework for incident command and gives, I won't say rules, but guidance on where incident command should be given the type of incident. Some of it's pretty simple. Yep. It's a fire. Yep. The fire chief is in charge. We take our orders from him or her, yep. Right? It's a shooting. The police department's in charge. If, for the sake of an argument, I don't know, you had an airliner come in with 300 people vomiting, that would be EMS, would be incident command for that large-scale medical. Those are kind of the simplest ways, yeah. And there's subtleties to it, but there is a national framework for who is actually incident command in each.
The lead agency.
Who is lead agency?
The lead agency would, like he said, police if it's a shooting, fire if it's a fire. But we all work in a unified command system. So there would be a highest ranking person from the police, from the fire, from EMS in one place. An active shooter, we might have 2 locations. We had firefighters shot at in Mattapan last year. So the police and the fire command were 2 blocks away, but then we also had police and fire command at the building that the shooting took place in. So I think we're the best in the country. I travel around and they do say that we work well with the unified command system. We all talk to each other. We get together. We determine. We don't even have to voice it. We know who's in charge if it's a shooting or a fire, so it works out very well.
I'd like to add, Counselor, too, that goes right down to the lowest level.
Yeah.
So it's a simple house fire in Dorchester. The sergeant shows up. The first on scene, whoever the officer in charge is, EMS shows up. First thing that sergeant does is find the fire chief and say, what do you need? Right? It works right down at that level. The other thing is that there is a plan where to hand off incident command based on the phases of the event. So to use, at one point, the Boston Marathon, the bombing. And in the immediate, police department's incident command in the event, but then we have a rescue phase. But then it goes, and rescue, triage, and so on. And then at some point it transitioned back to police command when it became a crime scene.
Yeah.
And there is sort of this free-flowing, fire says, okay, we're out, it's a crime scene, it's all yours now.
Yep. No,
Works
totally
like
makes
that.
sense. I really appreciate that. I'm going to ask one more question and kind of shifting focuses. And I think Councilor Pep had talked about or asked about some of the language barriers that we're seeing, right? And having personnel from your staff at specific events, such like the Dominican Festival, as I mentioned, having, Spanish-speaking officers or EMS on site. In terms of being proactive in communicating to community, so not necessarily there hasn't been an emergency event, but what are we doing to prepare community for such events, and then specifically also on that, how are we getting to our immigrant communities, people who speak different languages, how are we being proactive in terms of that? I don't know if I have made my question clear. So how are we communicating with residents prior to any events happening? Are we hosting town halls? Are we? I just want to know or are we not doing anything at all? Are we expecting residents to just react when an emergency does occur?
I think when it comes to the community, the planning part of this event, they're attended by community members. So neighborhood association would be there to see what's going on. They would convey the message back to the community itself. With the firefighters, we have a diverse fire force, and my thing would be, if it's in Dorchester, I want firefighters that work in Dorchester, that go on these streets every day, that know how to navigate the one-way streets and the small streets and everything else. So I would like, that's what we try to do, is get firefighters that work in that community to staff these events.
So I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but again, it's a community police department. Every single day, we have weekly meetings, monthly meetings with the community. It's an ongoing conversation. I know you mentioned the idea of having a town hall or something like that. And certainly that's something we do. We have a special meeting if we feel that there's the need, or if the community feels the need. But I also think that it's just who we are. It's who we are as a department, that we are embedded in the community, and that we are part of their discussion at all times. So we can always, if yourself, one of the representatives, the community want to have a special time to discuss a special issue, always.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's who we are. We are part of this community discussion at all times. And sometimes I think that gets overlooked in the, well, what are we going to do about X or Y?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Council, real quick, before you move on, in regard to community work, I think the community work is the most important thing that we do at OEM. So we started like CPR. We graduated 50 CERT, community emergency response team members, 50 people last year for the first time since the 70s. We started CPR programs because there's nothing better than the person next door being able to help the person while you call 911. We've got a Stop the Bleed program that we teach people how to do initial Stop the Bleed program. So that's the stuff that we're trying to do in the community so we can facilitate some help for the other services by the time they reach. And so that's the community work that we're trying to do. Thanks.
Awesome. No, thank you so much. And that's exactly what I was looking for. So appreciate the panelists that we have. I'll turn it over now to for a second round of questions, starting with the lead sponsor. Councilor Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. First off, I want to, Daniel, I think I gave you a job in transportation, and transportation isn't here, so I do just want to uplift that you are the Assistant Superintendent from Public Works, but just wanted to clarify that. But I'll start off where you just talked about the community. One thing I know, like after the shootings at the Caribbean Fest, there were definitely more meetings with, Miss Shirley and that group. And I do want to uplift Councilor Flynn. I know after the St. Patrick's Day Evacuation Day Parade last year, proactively having meetings. I know there would always be at Local 7 ironworkers, city departments and others would come together a few weeks before the parade, but I do think it's community leaders, right? Because it's not just the police, fire, EMS, Parks Department. Many of the nonprofits and community leaders in South Boston are attending that, and Captain Boyle. So that's good to see when the community is proactively getting ready for an event to make sure that, they're, informed as much as they can be to help their neighbors. So that's good to know. One thing I do want to say also, I know Today Baker, who works in the special events, shared with us a lot of good protocols that they do before these events, and like what Councilor Pepin had said, like which different departments. I was glad to see that she said that there are, committee members dedicated, and they have that Wednesday meeting if someone has applied. But I'll just read down, because this is, I was happy to see that BPD, BTD, Parks, Property Management, ONS, ISD Health and Building, Public Works, Boston Fire Special Hazard, Boston Fire Field Services, EMS, Licensing, Alcohol, Licensing, Entertainment, NBTA, and DCR, and other outside agencies all attend those meetings. So it's clear that there already is a plan in place to coordinate with all the different departments. So definitely feel safer knowing that that is already happening. So thank you for that coordination. That's good to know. Another thing, it was brought up, thank you, Adrian, speaking about 911. I know we have, a couple weeks ago, filed a hearing to kind of talk more about how can we make sure that our 911 services here have all the resources they need, because they are that first call, and there's such a lot of pressure on that department, and so making sure that they have the supports they need. I know in the past it's been hard to keep it staffed and have the resources they need. And then also on the police staffing, there are times, like Commissioner Burke, like if, I don't know what alarm it would get to, that you already have relationships, right? If an incident gets to a point that, you know, a fire gets out of control or a obviously unplanned crime scene happens. So we definitely have relationships with surrounding towns and cities, but then there's times where we already know, like we plan ahead, right? So you obviously can call in real time, but I know like coming up for the evacuation day parade, they talked about, you know, we're down 135 police, so we're already reaching out to the state police are going to be there, the MBTA police or surrounding towns. So could you speak to those relationships with outside agencies and how it works differently when you need it in real time or when we're planning ahead saying, you know, let's plan for you to be there?
So in the fire department, every firebox in the city of Boston has a card that goes with it, and it goes up to 9 alarms, and it tells you who comes on each alarm. So it'll tell you the engine, the truck. When it's a surrounding area, let's say West Roxbury, on parts of West Roxbury, it'll say Brookline Engine 3. So Brookline knows they come when that fire comes in. So it's already laid out in advance for every firebox, every neighborhood in the city, who comes, even if they come from out of town. So that's how it works. It's automatic. They know it, we know it, so there's no time delay in getting other agencies in for us.
Are we on any other surrounding towns' calls to go out to
We
them?
do all the time.
We also,
Yes.
all the time?
Yes, and they will ask, I mean, myself personally, I've gone to Malden as a fire captain and different, because I worked in the South End, we traveled out there, different, I've been to Woburn at a fire, you know, so yeah, they do, we travel out. Not as common, it's got to be a big event, because they would go with their surrounding towns before they would jump 4 towns to have us. But certain resources like the drone now, the command center, technical rescue, we've gone to Everett with somebody trapped in a piece of machinery because they don't have the skills or hazmat. We are the major city in the state, the hub of the state, which that requires us to take care of everybody in the state when it comes to specialty rescues, and they know that. The fire chiefs in these towns will call and say, we have somebody trapped, you know, it's going to be a long-term rescue, we will go to that. So I think it's a good system, it works well now.
So on the police department side, I'm going to divide it into 2 different, if you will, there's the planned and the unplanned, you know, and for the planned event, you know, we have our partners in the state police, we have our partners in the various law enforcement councils. Those councils, that is their purpose, that's why they exist, you know, to provide that sort of consolidated, a mechanism for consolidated mutual aid. For an event, I know Councilor Flynn specifically mentioned, you know, St. Patrick's Day Parade. The state police have a natural role in that anyway. The spaces along the highways coming in, the beaches, the roads, Day Boulevard, the roads surrounding it are their primary patrol jurisdiction. So they already have a role there. There are times when, in order to supplement what we do, we will ask them to expand their footprint that already exists, maybe into the neighborhood, maybe up towards Dorchester Street, that sort of thing. MBTA police. Trust me, it's St. Patrick's Day, they have enough issues, but they also expand their footprint a bit outside the stations themselves, maybe into the street, surrounding it to assist us. So that's kind of the planned piece of it. The unplanned piece, as Chief Commissioner Burke mentioned, we're the elephant in the room, certainly in this part of the state. Our bomb squad responds to other municipalities constantly. Certainly the flow tends to be outward rather than inward in those sort of circumstances for the unplanned stuff. Whereas planned stuff, they're usually helping us. I personally, we've had public safety events where other municipalities have asked us in an emergency sense for assistance. I personally have responded as far out as North Andover during the, some of you may recall the gas explosions that they had up there, and they sent out a statewide call for help. I went up there with approximately 40 police officers that we pulled out of our various districts to assist them. Revere events, they had a few years back a shooting at a cinema. We sent officers over to there. So we do that sort of thing. Again, it's a very free-flowing thing, and we have what we call BAPERN, Boston Area Police Emergency Radio Network, where it's literally just dispatcher, a separate radio network, but dispatcher to dispatcher. The dispatcher from Revere can just get on and call Boston on the radio and say, hey, we've got 8 people shot at this theater. Can you please send us some help?
That's great.
And it's that. It doesn't even reach the command level. It's all happening right at the immediate operational level.
You, quickly, I know my time buzzer went off, but you mentioned the gas explosions. Do you have close relationships with the utilities already, knowing that, like Eversource and other?
We do,
right?
very close, really. I just met a guy in the elevator from Menstar. He's setting up training for us for the gas. We do all the time. We drill on that. Whenever there's a fire, we send a crew of firefighters to the basement to shut off the gas and electricity so we don't get electrocuted or we don't have a gas explosion. They're fantastic, those agencies. They show up and double check what we did. If we didn't get a chance to do it, they'll go down with the firefighter and do it for us. The utilities are fantastic.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Finn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to acknowledge the important role Michael Broll plays in working closely with you guys here and working with the city administration as well. So, Dan, want to acknowledge Michael and all of the Public Works team as well. You guys do an exceptional job. So thank you. Commissioner Burke, you attended my monthly meeting I had to discuss the Evacuation Day Parade, and I want to publicly say thank you for being there. And you had a very good recommendation and provided some good guidance for me on this issue. On one issue I want to highlight. So I highlighted obviously the parties that take place in and around a parade. It could be anywhere. It could be in South Boston. It could be at another location. But take the Evacuation Day Parade. People on roof decks, whether it's overcrowding or not. But then people just on roofs without any roof deck and basically watching a parade as the parade goes by, obviously probably drinking alcohol, but literally no safety banners at all, certainly illegal to be up there. Can you just talk about what you highlighted, Commissioner, because I think what you provided was a lot of good feedback.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilor. The firefighters are schooled in building construction. So a roof deck is one thing because the roof is reinforced, like you just said. There's railings on the roof decks, but there is an occupancy limit to the weight load on that roof deck. But then you have roofs that don't have roof decks on them. Those roofs are constructed, the maximum load would be for a heavy snow load, not for people weighing 200 pounds, 20 or 30 of them with no guardrail. They could slide right off these roofs. That's what concerns me. When I'm watching that parade, I yell at people on the roofs and they just toast their glass to me. I'm like, get down from there, because it's awful. If they come up, that roof collapses. there's going to be a lot of injuries in that, so that concerns me. I don't know how to stop that, though. I don't know how to get them off the roof or prohibit them from going up there, but it's a main concern. So that would be a technical rescue. We might have to get people that are trapped under lumber from the roof when it collapses. I mean, it would be an awful situation. So that's why it's important for us to be strategically located. This year, I discussed with you bringing 4 golf carts in, so I want to have golf carts so they can get to these locations quick. They can call for help and do some work before the rest of the firefighters get there. The roofs are a big concern for me. Let's say now, and we have a snowstorm, so we have a heavy snow load on that roof that weighs, it's water, and then you put people on top of that. You're exceeding the weight limit by a large amount. That could cause a collapse. So, yeah, that concerns us very much. You know, also firehouses. When I was a chief in South Boston, the people want to use the restroom in the firehouse, right? There's only one. So we talked to firefighter maintenance, and we had them drop, I think, 25 porta potties on the front of the firehouse to try and get the people out of the firehouses. These are city buildings, but we need access to get those trucks out. So we can't have them in the side of the building waiting to use the restroom, and we got to jump on the trucks, and these big trucks are rolling out around them. So things like that are really important to us to try to prevent them if they do happen, to mitigate them as quick as possible when they take place. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Superintendent?
So, a couple of things. First off, thank you for bringing it up in this forum, because part of this, hopefully there's at least a couple of people watching who will get the public education piece of it and not go up on their roof. But the other piece of it is actually part of our operations plan. We brief our supervisors and so on along the route. We specifically watch for people who are on roofs, and we work with our partners at ISD so that we know which ones are licensed and which ones are not. And where there is one that's either licensed but overcrowded, or where there's no license for people up there on that roof. And we routinely send police officers into the building to tell them to get down. And there's a mechanism where if they're uncooperative, then there's an enforcement mechanism for that through the Inspectional Services Department.
Thank you, Superintendent. And I also want to acknowledge Captain Boyle for the important leadership he plays in our community on all things relating to public safety and community policing. He's an exceptional police officer. Just want to acknowledge his leadership. Mr. Chair, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Councillor Pepin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I only have one question, and it's for Chief Jordan. I remember when I was Director of Neighborhood Services, I went over to your site in Jamaica Plain and got a training on different scenarios in case there's different types of emergencies in the city of Boston. Is there any way that we can do that with city councilors or any other city agencies so that we can kind of prepare, have an idea of what you guys do? I thought that was very helpful, and it put things into perspective of how much it truly goes into whenever there is some type of natural disaster or a threat.
Sure. I mean, we're more than willing. Every year we invite the council to come visit us, and we see some members and we don't see others, but that would most definitely be something that we would be more than willing to do. We'd be more than willing to put on something, give you guys some eyes and ears as to, and some of the inner workings of what the stuff that we do as well. For some of the programs that we currently run. I think our visits have been around us trying to facilitate like a new EOC. And maybe we need to change the focus of the visit to here's what we do every day, and here's some of the capacity, here's some of the things that we're involved in. So maybe we should have that conversation as well.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in that and help making that happen. So just wanted to put that idea out there. I knew that it was very beneficial to me back then to understand how much goes into your decision making. So maybe we could figure out how do we do that here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll be happy to, as chair, we'll be happy to work with the chief and get some of the colleagues out there. Are you technically in Jamaica Plain?
No.
I was going to say, I don't think,
Oh,
right,
sorry.
Soxbury, right? Yeah, yeah.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
I was going to say, yeah. No, is that all, Councilor Pepe?
That's it.
Okay. Councilor Fitzgerald, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. No further questions. Just want to thank you all for always setting the highest bar in the country, and hope we continue to raise the standard for everyone else to follow. But thank you very much for what you guys do.
Great. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. This is a very productive conversation. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues for any closing remarks, starting with the lead sponsor, Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. Just thank you all for being here. Definitely feel safer after listening to you and all of the coordination that you do put in every day. And I think it's important that, the residents who are Zooming in, and for us as counselors to be able to share that confidence that we do have plans, and other cities, towns, not just across the city, the state and the country, across the world, lean on us and ask for our advice. So let's make sure that we continue that. And like what Councilor Fitzgerald said, if we're concerned about funding from the federal and grants, we had a hearing a couple weeks ago with the Domestic Violence Unit, learning that some of their grants are going to be affecting staffing. So knowing that we're going to have to be vigilant in the budget season to make sure that no funding is being taken away from the great work that you guys already do. So thank you always for all you do.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the administration team for your professionalism and for the hard work of the men and women of your department. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Pepen?
Just want to say thank you to the panelists for being here, first of all, and for all the work you do for the city of Boston. For me, it's an honor to be able to call you guys colleagues in this, so thank you for everything.
Great, thank you. I think Councilor Fitzgerald already said his. Yeah, okay. I've also been informed by central staff that we have 0 signups for public testimony. With that, are there any final remarks that any of you want to say and put into the record?
I just want to thank you for having this forum. I think this topic is front and center for all public safety agencies worldwide, not just here. And to talk about it in advance of any tragedy happening, I think it only makes our response better. And thank you for having this forum.
And again, thank you for offering the opportunity for you as the representatives to give us the community input into what we do. The questions you're asking us are ones your constituents are asking you, and community policing is about building trust, so answering questions is part of that. Thank you.
Councilors from EMS as well, thank you very much for including us. I think even a couple of different takeaways from here. I know one of the questions you were asking, Mr. Chair, was about community involvement, even in some of the planning. And yes, there is. But as we see with a lot of things, if you meet with one community group, you met with one community group. Sometimes several people from the same neighborhood don't always agree on things, but that shouldn't stop us from seeking more input in advance and building that capacity in there, especially with, it could be an elder Russian-speaking population in Brighton, where, okay, maybe one Russian speaker on the job. So those are all good things. And one thing, Councilor Pepin, you reminded me, and I meant to bring up, was all of us have good reach back available and access to the neighborhood response, neighborhood reps. And they all have specialties there, and that age strong, they all have capabilities to come up and help us with that. So like the neighborhood rep in Southie is on calls that we do 5 days a week on Massacas. They're involved. So we do get to talk with them all the time around different issues. So the idea of being able to bring them in a little bit, even I think more for the active planning for how do we best prepare your neighborhoods in case something happens? Because we did see back in 2013, even at the bombing, there was a lot of members of the public who either had prior experience, either whether it was military or a lot of people who live and work here are in work for hospitals or they're in healthcare. And there was a lot of people that were effectively able to like, yep, okay, you got this, yep, fine, just hold pressure, we got to get this guy over here. They'll do it. There are a lot of people who you empower them and they're there, they're going to help. So again, how do we make sure we bake that into every plan, whether it's the road race for 500 people or the 4th of July? That's one of the takeaways I'm getting from today. Thank you.
Awesome. I just really want to thank our panelists for being here and for your thoughtfulness in answering all of our questions. I want to thank the members of the public. I want to thank my colleagues for their participation in today's hearing, and special thank you to Councilor Murphy, Councilor Flynn, and Councilor Pepin for sponsoring this hearing. This hearing on docket number 0163 is adjourned. Thank you.